So welcome. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Grigg. If Tony, if you'd take care of muting everybody, I don't think we need to turn the cameras off. If you just got it set to view who's talking. But please everybody mute so that we can get on with the meeting. Welcome everybody to January 2021 virtual professional development meeting. Our guest speaker is Richard Jones. We're talking about 5 practical tips for reducing stress and increasing happiness. Before we get to that, though, we need to take care of some chapter business, and on to Roger, our chapter president.
Thank you, Joe. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of 2021. We appreciate you joining tonight. I think you'll really like the speaker. More than liking the speaker, I think you'll get something that you can take home and use from the speaker and use during these times. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope the holidays were great for you, and we're all looking forward to a better, healthier, happier 2021. It looks like from what's going on with the vaccinations around the country that we're on our way to at least what we think is going to be a better year. And so I look forward to getting a chance later in the year to see you face to face. We are planning to do virtual meetings probably through May. For our May dinner meeting. That could change. As always, it's subject to change, but right now that's our plan. We're planning to have some tours. We're planning to have some virtual tours. We're planning to have some dinner meetings. We're planning to have some happy hours and all the things we normally do, as well as Honey will talk about our classes here in just a second. I wanted to mention it's in the newsletter, and you can see the pictures. I wanted to tell everybody, though, voice to voice, that helped with the adoptive family program that's on this call. Thank you very much. Whether you wrapped and delivered, whether you helped shop, whether you donated finances, anything that you did, we really appreciate it. We had 51 families and 150 kids is the way it came out, and everything was delivered on time in typical supply chain fashion. Everything from planning to procurement to manufacturing to logistics and distribution went off like clockwork, even with a couple of emergency rush orders on the 23rd of December. They were, as many of you know, I like things delivered before Christmas Eve, and even the emergency orders on the 23rd were delivered by 5 o'clock on the 23rd of December. So it all worked great, but it takes a lot of hands, and I know I get a lot of kudos for this, but it takes a lot of hands, and I appreciate every hand that helps and every dollar that helps. And thank you very much. We made a lot of kids a lot happier this Christmas. A lot of things out there, announcements, different chapters talking about what APICS is doing or ASCM is doing. They have moved a lot of chapters to be forums, which means they're just like a chapter, except they don't teach classes anymore. They need to partner up with a chapter to teach classes. So there are some around the Western US that we're partnering up with, and we're going to certify their instructors to go out and teach classes. They're just going to have to buy their books through our chapter through APICS or ASCM. The other thing that's happening, and I mentioned this in couple of the last 2 newsletters, is that ASCM, Association for Supply Chain Management, is requiring us as a chapter to change our name to ASCM Colorado from APICS Colorado. The certifications will still be APICS certifications, but our website, our name, our logo will change to ASCM Colorado. Haven't seen anything the last couple of weeks. Really expected to see something the last couple of weeks when the first of the year rolled around, because it's supposed to be effective then, but we haven't seen anything, so we haven't changed anything. It shouldn't be, as I said in the newsletter, it should be seamless to all of you. We're going to do the same dinner meetings, tours, classes, happy hours, networking, professional support that we always do. All of that will continue. I don't think you'll see any hiccups. I don't think you'll see many changes at all. So, it's probably best to have us all named the same, because it has created some confusion in the marketplace. What's APICS? What's ASCM? The brand of the certifications is APICS, and that's been around for many years, and so that doesn't want to get lost in all of this. If you have any questions, you can call me. I'll tell you what I know. There are a lot of things that are unknown at the current time, but we have bought a bunch of domains out there on the web, so that if you search on anything, it should lead you back to APICS Colorado, ASCM Colorado. So again, we don't want to lose you. We don't think we will. And I don't think it'll be a disruptive event for us. With that, let's move on to education and see what Honey's got in store for us the first of the year here.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I hope that all is going well for you. We have a variety of classes that are coming up in the coming weeks. So if you take a look at our schedule, we've got CPIM program that begins in mid-February. We also have a lean workshop that we are going to be holding beginning February the 17th for 7 weeks, and that is a Wednesday night. We also have our CSCP program that will be beginning on March the 13th as well. And CLTD is scheduled for March the 27th. So we've got a lot of things that are coming up in the next few weeks. Please, if you're interested in any of those classes, get registered soon so that we can make sure that everyone's got a seat in the class. We have online registration available for all of the classes. If you don't have the link, it's available on the APICS website, apicscolorado.org. If you cannot find it, please don't hesitate to email me, hjohnson@mss-technologies.com. I'd be happy to give you any information about our classes. We've got the new sales and operations planning course that we just held the first sessions in the fall, and we've gotten such positive reviews on that class. So many organizations have been really trying to get their arms around the sales and operations planning process. So that class will be held on Wednesday nights in April. And again, please get registered online if you have interest in any of those classes. Let me know. All of our classes are also available for private courses to be held with your teams. Right now, since we're doing everything online, we can hold online private classes. Once we get back to face-to-face meetings, we can hold classes at your site as well. So if you have interest in any of those classes as a private course, just let me know and we can coordinate that with you. I was looking for a couple of folks that were scheduled to be on the call and I don't see them. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. One of the best things in the networking sessions for me personally is being able to introduce newly certified APICS professionals. And I know a couple of people that just got certified that were on the roster for tonight, but I'm not seeing them as I'm just quickly scrolling through the arrivals list. So Michael Sharp, are you here tonight? He might not have been able to join us. Narendra,
Yeah,
I don't know.
give him one more second. I did see his name a minute ago on the screens.
Okay.
I swear I saw him. Guess not. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I scrolled through and I didn't see him. Narendra, were you able to join? I didn't see him join yet. So we'll catch up with them at a later meeting when they can join us. But just to let the rest of you know, one of the things I like to do, what we've done for years as a chapter, is recognize our new APICS certified professionals. If we're in person, I would present them with their certification pin. I do make sure that they get their certification pin after the meeting. And we've been for years celebrating with them with a little reward of, it used to be a crisp $100 bill that I would pry out of Gary Williams' hands, but we do make sure that they do get a check. But in order to do that, they do need to be present at our dinner meeting or our networking session, and tell us why their APICS certifications are so important to them and to their careers. So since I know that those two were newly certified, I'll open it up. Is there anyone else who is a new APICS certified professional? All right.
Wow.
All right, I think that no one else tonight. And so Roger, with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you. Thank you. Hope to see everyone in class.
Thank you, honey. Yeah, I'm sure folks will show up for that $100 sooner or later. That's interesting. 60 there's 63 people showing on the call. I know there's at least 4 doubles, so that's 67 people on the call, and nobody's newly certified. That's amazing. You remember that dinner meeting a while back where we had 22 people in the room that were newly certified. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, thank you, honey. A lot of education programs, as she said, sales and operations planning. We ran 2 sessions, a private and a public in the fall. Great successes. We look forward to one this winter spring session as well. So sign up if you're interested. So my picture's back up there as interim vice president of membership of the chapter. I am tired of running that role for the last 5 months. And so I am very pleased that I get to introduce a new vice president of membership tonight. Before we get there though, we do have 375 members. Our membership is up a little bit from where we started our fiscal year in July. It's up about 25 or 30 members since July 1st, so that's great. Most of them are from classes, students that are attending classes. And so we welcome all of those. I know there's a few of them here on the call tonight. I noticed them as they came in. So welcome. I'm glad you're attending professional development meetings. With that, I want to go ahead and roll the slide 1, Joe. I'd like to introduce you all to Carlos Calderon. He is going to become our vice president of membership. He was appointed by me last week and unanimously approved by the board of directors as an appointed person. He will come up for re-election come next spring, just like the rest of the board of directors. But excuse me. But for now, he's our vice president of membership. He is originally from Bogota, Colombia. He lives in Louisville, Colorado, halfway from Denver to Boulder. He owns his own consulting company. He has both a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Science in Mechanical Engineering. He is CSCP certified. He's got 20 years experience in supply chain management, manufacturing, and engineering. He's married with 2 children. Carlos, welcome, and thank you for volunteering for the position.
Thank you very much, Roger. I appreciate the kind words. Excited to be part of the team, and really looking forward to meeting each and every one of you throughout my term. So appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Carlos. I think all of you that are here at the Colorado chapter, when we get back together, get a chance to know Carlos, get a chance to know him virtually through these meetings and other meetings. I think you'll find he's a great person to know, and I think he's going to do an excellent job as vice president of membership. And because there are things that come up, and membership is something's wrong or something needs to be attended to, and I think Carlos is a person you're going to be able to rely on. So thanks again, Carlos. We really appreciate you volunteering.
Thank you.
Joe Gregg, I'll turn it back over to you to introduce our speaker and anything you need to say about programs.
Okay, I'll talk about programs till the end. Let's get into our speaker right now. Richard Jones to talk on 5 practical tips for reducing stress. Richard Jones holds a Master's of Arts degree in social psychology and an MBA with a concentration in healthcare management. Rich, you should have control now if you want to bring up your screen.
Diane. It's on.
He holds multiple licenses and certifications in counseling and also a certified employee assistance professional. Mr. Jones has 20+ years experience providing therapy, counseling services, and psychological education in various settings. Richard is an expert in employee wellness and resilience. His methods grounded in positive psychology are universally recognized and best practice in terms of stress reduction and emotional health. Thank you, Rich, and take it away.
Okay, and Joe, I'll ask you this question. Can you see the PowerPoint? I just needed to make sure I got it up there and we're good. Okay.
I can see you just fine at the top and your PowerPoint's below it.
Okay, great. All right, guys. Well, thank you for having me. I was listening to your conversation beforehand and talking about the pandemic, talking about COVID-19, how we deal with it. And so I think this is you're going to find this helpful tonight. It's going to hit home for a lot of the things. You guys are already thinking the right way. You're already talking the right way. Whenever you try to come at these type of situations with an optimistic point of view, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge it for what it is. That's the way you want to play this. But I'm going to give you some really solid advice and tips tonight. This is the 24th positive psychology webinar that I've done since the pandemic. And I have to tell you, I've been a psychologist and a counselor for 20 years. And for me, business is booming right now. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we weren't, living through the situation that we're living through. But stress levels, mental health issues, mental health crises, it's unprecedented. It's like nothing I've ever experienced. And I think what it is, it's this low level, ever present background noise, for lack of a better term, that we're dealing with. The health threats, some of the associated political unrest that's going on with that, regardless of what your personal views are on those situations. That stuff chips away at us. And then the other area would be everything becomes a heavy lift during COVID-19. Every decision is like weighty, and everything that was routine is no longer routine. That's why it's important to do a stress management seminar or do a stress management education session in the face of this. Now, obviously, for the record, I think this is something that the world should be doing on a routine basis. And so what we're going to do, we're going to talk through this. We're going to talk about some of the special challenges with COVID-19. I'm going to try to cover as much as I possibly can in a 45-minute period. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have a question, but I will also, at the end, leave us some time and try to fill in the blanks. And the ultimate goal is that you come away with a very simple kind of personal plan. Again, some of you are already doing things. Some of you are already thinking about how you're going to manage stress related to this, but you'll just be able to have 3 or 4 things you can put on the list and say, this is what I'm going to do daily to try to keep my mind and keep my mental health in check, is really what this is about. This is who I am. Joe already introduced me. I'm not going to go deep into my credentials. We have a certification body too that in my profession, and I've gotten a lot of the letters that are necessary to do the work that I do. Probably one of the areas that's most pertinent to these type of talks is I'm a certified employee assistance professional. That's designed to work with industries. That's designed to work in corporate environments, and it's sort of like a mix of psychology and human resources. And that's how I got into this business and doing these type of talks. So why do we want to bother with this? Stating the obvious. And one of the ways that I like to think of it is it's one of these situations where you can pay me now or you can pay me later. I had a supervisor early on in my career at one of the rehabs that I helped start that would talk about that. And what do I mean by that? We can ignore mental health if we want to ignore it. We can ignore stress management issues if we want to ignore it. But eventually, we are personally and professionally going to pay the price for ignoring it. And typically, unfortunately, we do ignore it and we wait. And you guys have probably heard the term hit bottom. We wait for people to hit bottom. We wait for people to have some type of an incident or some type of major league crisis that forces them to reach out and raise their hand and say, hey, Rich, can I please see you? Can you please help me? At U-Turn and the company that I started, we don't believe that that's an effective approach. We believe like it's better to get ahead of this and go upstream. This is just some of the information that's out there from the World Health Organization talking about this thing called burnout. And this is pre-COVID information that I'm giving you. It's cranked up. You'll see some statistics talk about 1 in 4 people have had suicidal thinking during the pandemic. Feelings of hopelessness have been ratcheted up. Isolation has been ratcheted up. And the idea would be if we don't get ahead of this, we're going to run into major league health conditions back to that point of pay me now or pay me later. So I want to talk about a really general model or a way to think of this, that everything that I talk to you tonight is going to be founded on this very busy slide, but it's actually relatively simple. If you look at the red circle at the top, let's pretend that that's just everyday stress. That's everyday stress, all the things that we got to deal with, ranging from we have a flat tire when we leave the house and we're going to be late for work, to up to all the very serious things we're dealing with right now with COVID-19. And that happens, regardless of whether we want it to happen or not. It's there, it shows up. And then we have these other contributing factors that will determine how that impacts us. It could be underlying issues. I'll share with you guys that I'm a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder. I was in a car accident in 1999. I became addicted to opioids. I've been in recovery for 20 years. And for me, I have underlying issues that I need to take care of. I need to make sure I'm on my game. Or we also have undeveloped resiliency skills and coping skills. We don't know how to deal with the stress. And then what happens is it comes through our filter. We're vulnerable. We have no defense. And it triggers, this term trigger. You'll hear this a lot in mental health and substance use services. It triggers an issue for us. It triggers stress-related problems. It even triggers, believe it or not, things like poor performance. There's this term, generalized incompetence, which is a term that's used to describe the phenomenon that occurs when a person is chronically stressed out, chronically burned out, and can't do their job the way that they used to be able to do their job, because it affects your concentration, brain fog, distraction, that kind of thing. So we go through life, and if we're not prepared to deal with stress, we're triggered. Then it gets more complex and more problematic, because this slide, as we're triggered, a snowball effect takes place. And we have these undeveloped skills. We don't really know how to deal with this. We have underlying issues. The problems from our work performance, it starts to add to the stress, and the bucket gets even more full. And the problems get even more intense. And that's when you see people crash and burn. That's when you hear the story of the person who, got fired because they showed up to work under the influence, or you hear the person of the executive who did an irreparable thing or made a fatal mistake, so to speak. And what I'm here to tell you tonight is we don't have to wait for that at all. It's actually silly to wait for that point. And there are some very simple things that we can put in place. And this slide is meant to talk about that. If you look at the green, so what we can do is, number one, a person like me, and there's this thing called stigma around substance use disorders and stigma around mental health. I reject that out of hand. I reject it out of hand, and I want to tell you that statistically speaking, most of us will deal with some type of a mental health issue before it's all said and done. If you add in people that we know, we most certainly are going to be personally acquainted with this. But the stigma keeps us from getting treatment. It keeps us from getting specialized care. So you have to take care of that. That's the green box that says ongoing treatment. But tonight I'm going to talk about coping skills and resiliency skills, and you can start that today on your own. And that takes care of the other box. And then what happens is we start to reduce the stress. We start to push the snowball in the other direction. And you can see that if you start to practice these things in your life, you actually can turn the train around. And honestly, you can thrive. In our world, in the U-Turn world, and U-Turn is the name of our company, and it's our online learning management program that we put together. In the U-Turn world, we look at this as enhancing performance and actually thriving, not just surviving. We do not take a despair-filled look at mental health. Not at all. We don't think of it as a label. We don't think of it as a scarlet letter. We think of people who take care of their mental health, and people who take care of their stress levels are actually the best employees in the building. They are the best citizens we have, quite frankly, because again, back to my original slide, you can't ignore it. It's a reality of life. So a couple things, just to get into some real technical stuff. There's technically two types of stress. There's good stress, or what's called eustress, and that's the stuff that gets you up in the morning. That's the stuff that keeps you going whenever you're getting tired, but you got to finish a project. It's good stress. All the neurotransmitters and all the hormones and chemicals that are released in our body to keep us moving, that's positive. But there's a flip side to that coin, and there's bad stress. And it falls into 4 different categories. There's chronic stress, or just busyness. You just got your task list is so long and you can't seem to catch your breath. There's toxic stress, and a really good example of that would be toxic people. toxic situations. If you've ever worked in a workplace where, the break room was where everybody went to complain, that would be an example. Toxic, sometimes our family members can be toxic, but it's people, places, or things that leave us washed out. Now, the next two are very, very specific to what we're dealing with right now, and they're actually the two most difficult situations to deal with. There is acute stress, or what is also known as trauma. And acute stress is an event. It's something that happens to you or a loved one or somebody who's a friend, or maybe even truthfully your company or your country or anything you care about that leaves a mark. And that's called acute stress. And then the really diabolical type of stress is stress of the unknown. Human beings do not do well with uncertainty. So we would rather know exactly what the threat is than wonder what the monster is around the corner. And COVID-19 has created this situation, a very strange, honestly, if you think about it, it's a perfect storm, and it's really unique in a social psychology world. The event that's getting us going, the acute event, is not a single event. It's an ongoing, never-ending event. Holy cow. How are we not going to be impacted by that? It's not like COVID came, hit us, and was gone, like a car accident does, or the death of a loved one. This thing's here every day, tapping us on the shoulder. And then, of course, the stress of the unknown associated with COVID-19. Am I going to test positive? Am I going to test negative? Am I going to get this? Is my son? What's going to happen with schools? Are the schools going to reopen? Are we going to be able to travel? What should the budget be? Like all those heavy duty, all those normal issues become heavy duty. And I want to tell you, like, this is a fact. Those are the two most difficult types of stress to deal with. So just to put a bow on the motivation around addressing this, again, we talked about a lot of these. The only other one I want to highlight on here is long-term health implications. There are about 70 different major league health conditions that are directly related to mismanaged stress. Now, let's move into specifics on what you might be dealing with and different ways to frame this up. And the first thing I want to talk about beyond COVID-19 is I want to move back to that idea of acute stress. And this is a fantastic book, and it's a hopeful book. And if you're looking for something to kind of from a self-help angle, this book by Bruce Feiler, Life is in a Transition. This was a monumental discovery for me, because I thought that life was this sort of normal, predictable trajectory, right? That as time goes by, I get better at everything in life, and life gets better, and then eventually I have the white picket fence, and I got 2.5 kids, and I live happily ever after, right? We want life to proceed in these predictable milestones. If you've ever been exposed to a psychology class, or you've ever known anyone who's in this field, people will talk about normal lifespan development. But here's what Bruce Feiler found, and other sociologists. They found that that's just not true. That really, this is what life looks like. And I'll wait as it advances, because there's a little bit of, this is what life looks like. This is actually the trajectory of life. And Bruce Feiler calls them life quakes. And statistically speaking, we will all have about 8 to 10 life quakes in our lifespan. And what is a life quake? Getting laid off from a job, getting a divorce, a very serious health condition. It could be things like a relationship breaking up. Anything that sets us back, anything that knocks us off our square and shakes us. And here's what's interesting. If you take into consideration yourself, like you just got your own life quakes, and then people that you know, friends, family, extended family, it's highly likely that all of us at any given time are either going through a life quake, or we know somebody who's going through a life quake. Yet, we think that things are supposed to be smooth. I call it the Hallmark movie phenomenon. The Hallmark movie phenomenon is that everything works out in the end. and everybody loves each other at the Christmas party, and everybody, you know, we have enough drama in our life, but everything's fine. And then you look at your own family. I'll speak for myself. I look at my own family. I'm like, whoa, why are things so different here? Well, what I want to share with you guys is it's okay to not be okay. It's actually normal to be abnormal. That's what I kind of want people to understand. And this is a good way to think of this is a life quake. It mimics a traumatic experience. It is a traumatic experience. And if you know anything about trauma, the important thing about trauma is that you have to process it, that you have to work through it. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to have somebody that you can talk to. So these are kind of like bonus takeaways I'm giving you right now. I just added this to the PowerPoint because I'm so compelled to talk about this stuff. If you're going through tough times, the number one thing that you can do to get through it without it leaving a mark, without it having a long-term impact, is talking about it. This flow chart right here it's called the information processing system. That's how our brain works. We take in data and then we move it along. And when we process it correctly, the psychological term is it becomes settled. We're not happy about the situation, but it's not really bothering us. It's not impacting our day-to-day experience. Now, how do you process things? This is the good news. You don't have to go see a therapist to process things. You certainly can, but you can process things with a friend. You can process things with a family member. You can process things with a boss or a mentor. When we talk about things, we're processing it. And the only key takeaway is you have to talk to somebody that's safe to talk to. You can't talk to somebody who's going to judge you and who's going to chastise you for your struggles with any given tough times. So you have people that go through really difficult things and they don't lose a step, and it's probably because if you know them and you can get to figure out what's going on, it's probably because they have supportive people around them. Here, what happens if you don't talk about it is it gets stuck. It might be a little bit hard to see that in the red at the bottom of the flow chart. It gets stuck. It's not settled. It's sitting there literally in our amygdala, in our fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain, and it triggers us during the day. It leads to a lot of irritability. In worst case scenarios, it leads to all kinds of other issues that could come up around maybe inappropriate ways that we cope with it, or depression, anxiety, all of the above. This is why, this is a bonus takeaway. This is number 6 of my tips. You got to find somebody that you can talk to. You got to find somebody that it's okay for you to not be okay with. And again, it doesn't have to be a therapist. Certainly could be a coach or a therapist, but it could be a family member, friend, just the same. And how this works, guys, on this next slide is, let me go back to this one. I apologize. So here's what happens. If you see this part of the brain where it says stuck memory, we go about our business all day and we do our thing and we have input and data that comes into us. And sometimes that input and data is very, very obvious in terms of it bothering us. There are very obvious triggers that people will push your buttons or situations will push your buttons. You just know about them. But those aren't the ones that tend to really get us. It's the subconscious stuff associated with either stuck memories or unprocessed tough times, or even just chronic stress. And as the tension builds, we have to relieve it, and we will relieve it. And the problem is we will either relieve it in an appropriate way or an inappropriate way. If you've ever heard the phrase, he blew his lid, or she lost it, or he finally just snapped out, that's what's happening. We're getting to a point where it's actually a very good analogy or a very good phrase. We're getting to a point where we can't handle it anymore. So the idea would be that, and this is the idea, this is the other thing that happens. A lot of times people will use drugs or use alcohol to try to escape that. I'm going to jump to the next slide, because the idea is if we learn coping skills and we learn preventative measures, we will not let that tension get to us. And that's what tonight, the 5 takeaways are all about. All right. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, guys, because I'm not going to have enough time to go through this if I don't. So I'm going to jump into the positive psychology stuff, and I apologize for that. I put too much in here. Just got too much I want to say. All right. So you have a context for what we're talking about. You're motivated to get this done. You understand it makes sense. You're like, Richard, preaching to the choir here. We get it. Let's talk about one technique or one way that you can deal with stress and some things that you can add to your toolbox. And the modality is called positive psychology. First, I want to tell you about the general positive psychology, and then I'll tell you about my involvement. Well, my involvement is very simple. I have a positive psychology coach, and I've been practicing positive psychology for about 13 years. The positive psychology story at a macro level is very interesting. So there was a man, his name was Martin Seligman, and Seligman was the president of the American Psychological Association at the time. This is in 1995. And so he had, like, by anybody's estimation, he had a great life. He had been a published author. He was the president of the APA. Like, that is the pinnacle of our profession. Like, you can't do any better than Martin Seligman was doing. 5 healthy kids, married, a pretty cool lifestyle where he was able to travel around the country from academic institution to academic institution, giving speeches and stuff. But despite these outward appearances, he was notoriously grumpy. It was actually kind of comical. People would joke about it. And it wasn't like he was mean, and he wasn't depressed, but he was just grumpy. So he tells the story much better than I do, but if you're at one of his conferences or you're talking to him, he tells the story that he's in his garden and he's gardening, and that's his hobby, and he's putting these weeds in a nice, neat pile behind him as he goes. And his 5-year-old daughter is coming up behind him, and she's picking up these weeds and throwing them up in the air as high as she can so that they fall down in her hair. Why is she doing that? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. That's what 5-year-old girls do. But he turns around, sees what she's doing, and he scolds her. What are you doing, honey? I told you you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed. I want these in a nice pile. She starts crying. He feels like crap. So he kind of pulls her aside. They start talking. They're having a conversation, and she says to him, as the story goes, "Daddy, do you remember when you made me give up my blankie?" She had a security blanket. And he says, "Yeah, honey, you've done great with that. We're really proud of you." And she says to him, "Well, Daddy, if I can give up my blankie, you can give up your grumpy." And he's like, "Oh, if you ever had a kid, you know what's going on there." He's just like, "Oh my gosh, what is up?" So he's the president of the APA. He has all these resources. He instantly goes in and he starts looking at these resources, and he wants to know, how do I make myself happy? How do I give up my grumpy? Here's what he finds. There are over 14,000 different articles, psychological methodologies and research studies on how to make somebody not depressed. But there was not one article on how to help somebody become happy. There were 2 articles describing happiness, but there was not any interventions or any procedures or protocols for getting happy, reducing stress, having a higher quality of life. And that's where positive psychology was born. Now, the idea is, as we increase happiness and well-being, the added benefit is we decrease stress. Or you could say it this way: we respond differently to stress, and it doesn't have that long-term impact on our health, on our mental health. And how does it work? So the first thing we need to understand is the science behind positive psychology. So what he did was, what Seligman did when he decided he was going to start positive psychology. Now remember, this dude had the full force of the APA behind him. He had all these resources, all these colleagues. And so what they said was, we're going to spend a few years studying happiness. And we're simply going to go around the world, and they developed life satisfaction surveys. They developed happiness surveys. They developed grit surveys. They developed stress surveys, all these different ways to measure quality of life. And what they looked for were patterns. And is there anything that a person in like Tokyo, Japan is doing on a daily basis for happiness that's the same as Greenville, South Carolina, or Denver, Colorado. You know, and if we can find these patterns, we're going to build interventions to capitalize on those patterns. And that's what they found. They found that there are some universally human behaviors associated with well-being and happiness. Now, the first thing that we want to understand is there's actually a formula. There's a formula for happiness. 50% of our happiness we are born with. It is true. Some of us are just grumpier than others. Some ethnicities are just grumpier than others. If you want to answer to a trivia question, if you're ever on Jeopardy and this comes up, the grumpiest people on the planet are the Scottish. And the happiest places on the planet tend to be some of the Latin American countries. Costa Rica was at the top of the list for a long time. Interestingly about Costa Rica, one of the reasons, and some of the Scandinavian countries as well, really score high on happiness. And then there were some isolated countries in sort of like the Far East. The United States falls in the middle of the pack in terms of this. Even though we're one of the richest countries, we don't necessarily have happiness figured out. So half of it you're born with. You can't do anything about that. But the other half of the pie, that's the cool stuff. First of all, 10% is our circumstances. Now, if we were in a room together and I said that to you guys, you would say, I don't know if I believe that, Rich. 10%, that circumstances mean, are we healthy? Are we not healthy? How much money do we have? That type of stuff. This is a little bit misleading. What it means is on the aggregate, over the long term, our circumstances will determine about 10% of our happiness. The green part is where we make our money. 40% of our happiness is 100% under voluntary control. Now, that is really, really powerful. If you look at like a pharmaceutical like Prozac is $1 billion drug because it showed about an 8% increase in well-being for folks in terms of reducing depression. If you can impact 40% of your happiness, you have to take advantage of this. But the problem is it's a long-term proposition and it's not as easy as taking medication. You're gonna have to do some things. You're gonna have to agree at the end of this session that you're gonna put some steps and some action to this idea. All right. So what's the first thing you can do? And I call it you manage your bucket list. And I already alluded to this earlier, but I'm going to use a little bit of a different graphic. This is your stress bucket. The red arrow indicates stresses that are coming into your stress bucket that you can't do anything about. These are mine. COVID-19, my family's health, the economy. Favor Greenville is a nonprofit that I run. U-Turn is a for-profit company that I run. Am I going to have to lay employees off? Like, I can't do anything about that. That's there. I wish I had a magic wand, but that's filling up my stress bucket. If you look to the left, my left, in the black ink, those are other life issues that I might be able to do something about, but they're kind of there and they show up. But I'm going to get it done by looking at the right, and it's in red. And this is just for me. These are the things that I can eliminate from my life that bother me. Number one, what I call the clickbait media, the clickbait news. I can't stand watching news stories where they're just yelling at each other. Facebook political debates stress me out. Constant information overload stresses me out. And again, this is just for me. Yours would look different. So what I want to do though is what am I willing to eliminate that's filling up my stress bucket, and I get rid of it. I release it, it's gone, so I'm not going to blow my stack. So the first thing is, what are the stressful things in your life that are just low-hanging fruit that you can get rid of? And it's really not even that hard. You just have to maybe not scroll through your Facebook page. That, again, that's my example. All right, that's tip number one. Tip number two, money back guarantee. It's called the free three. These three items, and I didn't name it the free three. These three areas have extensive research behind them in terms of lowering stress on their own. When combined, it's even more powerful. get outside, go outside, spend time in nature. What's really interesting about nature is that it's a stress reducer in and of itself, regardless of how hard you're working out or whether you're running or whether you're walking. But if you're out in nature, that reduces stress. Laughter reduces stress. And listen to music, preferably upbeat music, whatever genre you're into. You know, it doesn't have to be upbeat music, but something that lifts your spirits. And here's the challenge. A lot of times when I say this, people say, well, Rich, I already do that. I already listen to music. I already laugh. You don't do it that way. You do it intentionally. You put it on your calendar and you make sure each and every day you're checking these boxes and you're getting outside, even if you're walking around the block and that's all you can do. And you commit to it for 30 days. And I guarantee that if you do just those 3 things, you will have a reduction in stress. So the free 3, tip number 2. Tip number 3, if you're on social media, we recommend that you try a social media fast. I say 7 days. If we were in a room together, people would be like, that's crazy, Rich. Like sometimes 3 days. Or maybe you just keep it in perspective. And remember, I do these webinars in a lot of different settings, and people have different relationships with social media. If I do this with a younger crowd, like college students, they can't do this. They can't get off of social media. But this is a very funny picture. It's kind of interesting, and it's sort of like troubling as well. If you look at that picture, where that black box is, that's what she puts on social media. And then the reality is all the stuff that she leaves out of social media, her friends don't see it. So social media is a grind, guys. It's not, I get it. It's a necessary thing. I use it. I do it. I'm on social media. But we have to keep it in perspective because as human beings, we are status-seeking machines. We want to know where we stand with the tribe. We want to know how we compare to our friends. It's just too much, and it's manufactured. It forces you to compare yourself to an ideal that does not exist. Like her friends are looking through social media, and they're like, oh, look at Cindy. She's so pretty, and what a beautiful baby. But if they saw the rest of the picture, they'd be like, oh, my gosh, thank goodness I don't have a baby. You know, look at this house. So consider your relationship with social media. Tip number 4, focus on this acronym PERMA. And this isn't meant to be, you have to have a balance in all 5 areas. You got to have, spend 20% of your time in each area. This is simply an exercise, a mental exercise you go through, and you ask yourself, am I lacking in any area? Is there any obvious area that I need to work on? Number 1 is, what do you do for fun? What do you do? And I don't mean work-related fun. I don't mean like, hey, this is cool. I like my job stuff. I'm talking just frivolous, joyful fun. Mini golf, paintball, golf itself, watching funny movies, whatever it is. What do you do for fun? You got to have some pleasure in your life. Number 2, engagement. Do you have anything in your life? This could be work. Anything in your life that when you're engaged in it, it captures your full attention. You're in the zone. You're in the flow state. You're not thinking about anything else. Interestingly, when you tap into the flow state, you have benefits beyond just the experience itself. It releases neurotransmitters and chemicals into your body, feel-good chemicals when you're in the flow state. So maybe it's a hobby. Maybe you take up woodworking or take up some other type of hobby that totally absorbs you. That's when you know you're in flow. Relationships, quality over quantity. There are 2 types of people in the world. People who walk into a room and everybody's happy, and people who walk out of a room and everybody's happy. You want to spend time with the first group. Who do you have in your life that lifts you up? And do you have anyone in your life that just, when you get off the phone with them or you get done with it, you're like, oh, you just take a deep breath. So relationships. The next one, meaning. How do you make sense of bad things happening to good people? How do you make sense of this COVID-19 deal? Do you have a faith kind of system? Do you have, you don't have to, that's not like a requirement, but this idea of how do you think about it? Do you lean into it? Do you read books about it? I'm reading a book right now by Viktor Frankl called Say Yes to Life. Viktor Frankl was a concentration camp survivor. And he writes in his book, also in another book that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning, on how they were able to find joy even in the middle of a concentration camp. Moments, small little moments. And then the last one is attitude. You guys were talking about this at the beginning. You can choose your response to any given situation. You can try to look at it as cup half full. And you ask yourself, is there any area that you're obviously lacking in? And then the last tip, turn the Teflon into Velcro. You are hardwired to notice negative things. From an evolutionary psychology point of view, it kept us alive. Back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers, there was no such thing as an anxiety disorder. An anxiety disorder was a really good thing. The people who were paying attention, who were scared, they were the ones staying alive. So we were naturally selected to look for the dangers, to look for the negatives. It's not natural for us to notice the positives. So here's your challenge. Starting today, every day at the end of the day, you will write down 3 good things that happened to you, and you will commit to not repeating yourself for 30 days. And what it'll do is, about day 4 or 5, you will find yourself that you'll have to really pay attention to the day and pick out the good things. And what this does is it reconditions your brain. It's neural pathways. It's called refire to rewire. It reconditions you toward a more positive orientation. So what you do is, and I can get this PowerPoint to Joe or whoever would want to distribute it if you guys wanted to reference it. But very simply, this is just an example of what I did. I'm going to do the free 3 for the next 30 days. I'm going to commit to 3 good things. I need to continue my spiritual journey. I'm going to read a little bit more. And I'm going to eliminate the clickbait media. And the book that I'm reading on Viktor Frankl, somebody asked me what the name of it is. This particular book is called Say Yes to Life. It's called Yes to Life in Spite of Everything. But the other book by Frankl, that especially the first part of the book, is called Man's Search for Meaning. Okay? So that's, you take those 5 tips, actually you take the 6th tip, which is to find somebody to talk to, and you don't have to write them down. You can just note them in your mind, but you commit to doing them. And this is how you get a hold of me. And again, I can get this information to Joe. This is my 24th webinar during the COVID-19 situation. This is what we do. uturn.net is an online learning management system. We are going to be rolling out a self-paced stress management curriculum for companies, because we think this should be integrated into EAPs, integrated into human resources. It should be, and it can be self-paced. It's a very affordable product. So this, I guess, is a shameless plug. But at any rate, that's my email, rich@uturn.net. And the website is www.uturn.net. And you can certainly reach out, ask me any questions, or if you wanted me to do this presentation somewhere else, just say the word, I'll be there. Now, I went through a lot, and we have about 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions or any clarification I could give them. Sorry that I flew through that stuff, guys. I get excited, get fired up, put in some extra information into this one. Anybody have any questions? I'll look at the chat.
So Rich, this is Roger. I just wanted to tell you, I saw your presentation when you did it for the Greenville chapter, and I think there's some good advice here. I tried some of your tips, and they work during this very difficult time.
All right, thank you, Roger. Roger is not a plant. We did not tell him to say that.
No, I got no pay.
Yep, no pay. Does anybody else have anything that they would want to ask? Or, like I said, I can get you this PowerPoint. I can get it to Joe, and he can distribute it, I'm sure.
I just have one thing to say. I just can't wait to see my Scottish friend to tell him about this.
You tell him to reach out to me. He's going to get mad at you. Watch what happens. He's going to verify it. Yeah.
You are right on the money.
Yeah. That's hilarious. That's awesome.
With all that scotch.
That is great. So, all right, Joe, I don't know if it's all yours then, brother.
I do have control now, Rich. Thank you very much. One thing, here we go. All right, so folks, programs update situation. So on our website right now, I don't have it posted, but on February 10th, we will have Dr. Vance of Valencia talking about value stream analysis. So that's
Hey,
on
Joe, I'm sorry to
February
interrupt
10th.
you, but am I good to
Yep.
go?
You are good to go.
Yep, it's 10 o'clock my time, so I'm going to jump off and I'll talk to you guys later.
Hey, well,
Thank you very
for
much.
attending. I can't tell you thank you enough, Rich. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Joe.
Thanks,
Thank
Rich.
Okay, so I said as February 10th, Dr. Vance of Valencia to talk about value stream analysis. Survey. Let's put that in the chat. Folks, I'll post in the chat here right now the link you see down there, but also if you want to pull your phones out, of course it didn't want to do it, did it? Come on. I will email this survey link out to everybody to please take the survey to tell us how we did for this PDM. It's a big importance for us to keep track of things. It also lets me know if you have any other great ideas out there. Tony, if you're out there, if you can get them to please share my screen on my phone. This should say Lieutenant Colonel Joe. Make me presenter, rather. Not webcam.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me find it, Joe. Lieutenant Greg Joe is you are the presenter now.
Okay, great. Come on, guys, let's go. Start screen broadcast. It's showing up? It is not. Come on, we had this working over there. That'll do it right there. 2, 3, 1. All right.
There you go. We can see you now, Joe.
Okay. Trying to get it to switch. All right. So the drawing, the annual monthly drawing is now worth $400 this month. You must be a member of the Colorado chapter and you must be present to win. And here we go. Please, drum roll, please. And Peter Kornhoffel is who won out. So I don't think I saw Peter. I was on the guest list. Peter, you out there? Appears he is not. All right. So let's take it back to this one.
So,
Roger, if you would like to wrap it up.
so you're the 500 progressive next month, Joe, is that right?
Yes, it will be.
That's getting to be a nice pot of gold. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. I do think that Rich had some valuable pieces of information, especially it's especially important, I think, right now while we're all going through this pandemic and all the changes we have in our lives. So look at his PowerPoints. Chris Tomlin will be posting them on our website, so they'll be out there as well. And you'll be able to take a look because he does have a lot of stuff to go through, and he went through it kind of quick. But I think some of the tips are very valuable. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for being part of our chapter and spending these past couple hours with us. We appreciate it. We look forward to the next meeting. Happy New Year. Let's make it the best year we can. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.